Hi, welcome inside the International Space Station Flight Control Room. We are here today with astronaut Shannon Walker. Astronaut Shannon Walker was just, 2 years ago aboard that International Space Station, and she flew aboard Expedition 2425.
That's
And
correct.
it was 163 days. And so she knows what this experience is like, docking to the station and the hatch opening and then living aboard the space station. Welcome and thank you for joining us to talk to us about this.
Thank you very much for having me.
Great. So, first, let's just talk about that road to space station because, as I understand, it's a long one. It's not, just, hey, I get assigned and there you go.
That's correct. You don't just wake up one morning and say, hey, I'm going to go fly on a rocket. The training process is about 2.5 to 3 years long, depending on which seat in the Soyuz you're assigned to. It's a little bit longer for the people that sit in what's called the left seat, because that is the co-pilot seat. And so you spend a lot of extra time in Russia learning all the systems of the Soyuz and learning how to fly it, just like the commander of the Soyuz does. So my training was about 3 years long.
Wow. And when you did get assigned and then you're training, first I guess just tell me a little about that training. I mean, it's not all just here. We're here in Mission Control. We're here in Houston, but you go all over the world.
That's correct. We train all over the world. We spend a lot of time in Russia, of course, because we are flying these days on the Soyuz spacecraft, and so we have to go through a full training program there, just like we had a training program here with the space shuttle. So that training for the Soyuz takes 6 months to a year that we spend in Russia. We go back and forth between Russia and Houston, interspersed with the Soyuz training. We learn the space station system. So we spend time in Houston doing space station training. We spend time in Germany learning the Columbus module. We spend time in Japan learning the Kibo module, and we spend time in Canada learning how to operate the robotic arm. So we spend a lot of time all over the world.
All over the world, and then you eventually fly, and then you're flying literally all around the world.
That's correct.
Good deal. Well, so when you're doing all this traveling to train and that sort of thing, so with your crew members who you flew with, do you train together? So are you a close-knit family before you even get there to space station, or?
That's kind of one of the hard parts these days, because you spend a lot of time not training with your crew because everybody's got a different schedule, and it kind of depends on some of your duties on the space station or your duties on the Soyuz. So because I was co-pilot on the Soyuz, I spent more time in Russia. My crewmate, Doug Wheelock, was going to be one of the EVA or one of the spacewalkers, so he had to spend more time in Houston doing the spacewalk training that I didn't have to do. And then I spent more time doing robotics training, and so it just depends. And unfortunately, you don't get to spend a lot of time training together, but we do try and spend personal time together, so we do know each other.
You get plenty of time once you get there.
Yes, and that's true. We have lots of time together on orbit.
Plenty of togetherness. So let's now just real briefly describe for me what that launch is like for you.
The launch is amazing. We actually enter the Soyuz about 2.5 hours before the launch. We go through a bunch of system checks, and once those checks are done, we've got about 45 minutes to an hour. We just have to sit and wait while the ground finishes the preparations for the shuttle. So we're sitting there calmly, just waiting, and then all of a sudden, the ground starts talking to you again, and you start hearing things happen beneath you. You start hearing these big valves move, and you can tell that the engines are being pressurized, and then you know something's going to happen, and you're watching the clock tick down to the time of your launch, and then the engines light, and everything starts rumbling, and you're not moving yet. It's just getting ready to go. And when the engines are at full power, you slowly lift off, and you can feel the speed build up, and there's so much noise and so much vibrations. It's just an amazing ride.
What are you feeling when you're going up?
You feel, well, one, a lot of excitement. It's very exciting. You also feel the pressure from the G-forces. So you're laying back in your seats, and so you have pressure on your chest, and so it's like someone is sitting on your chest, and you build up to about 4 Gs going uphill, and so it's just a lot of vibration, a lot of noise, a lot of pressure, and a lot of excitement.
And then once you get there, how do you know you've made it?
When you know you make it into orbit, when the third stage engine cuts off and separates, there is a huge bang, and then all of a sudden it's quiet, and you're just kind of hanging in your seats, and you know that you're floating in space.
Wow, that's exciting. Okay, so now let's talk about that 2-day trip, because it's a 2-day trip to the International Space Station. So you have all this anticipation, this build-up, and this great adrenaline rush, and you're there, and you're floating, but 2 days?
Yeah, 2 days can be a long time. There's a lot of time where you've got a lot of activity, and there's a lot of time when you have absolutely nothing to do. So once you get on orbit, you have to do a lot of systems checks. So as soon as you're in orbit, you're busy. You're still busy from the launch. You make sure that the pressurization is holding in the spacecraft. You do a lot of leak checks. You check out all their motion control systems. That takes a couple of orbits, and then about 2 orbits after you're in space, you actually do the first rendezvous burns, the first engine burns to put you on the right trajectory to reach the space station.
And how was the space?
Oh, how's the space inside the Soyuz? It's kind of small. It is kind of small. The descent module where you ride to space and you come home is a very small location. But you do have an orbital compartment above you. You get to open the hatch, and you do have a little more space to move around in for those 2 days.
Okay. Wow. So hopefully you like the people you're flying with.
Yes, you better like them.
Get along anyway. If not, you're going to force yourself to. So I have a question here now. We polled public. Thank you guys for sending us the questions. We do have a couple of Twitter questions for you. One of them comes from IB Happy Hoppy. How long do they stay in the Sokol suits until docking?
That's a good question. So the Sokol suits are the pressure suits that we wear during launch and entry to protect us if there's a problem. If there's a big leak in the Soyuz, we would still be safe. So we are in our pressure suits for a couple of orbits after launch, and so we are able to get out of them maybe 2.5 or 3 hours after you launch, and we're in them for about 5 hours before launch. So you're in your suit for a long time, but you do get to take them off. You get into some regular clothes and spend that time for the 2 days just in regular clothes, and then right before docking, you put your suits back on as a safety precaution, because you are essentially colliding with a big object in space, and you want to make sure everything's going to be safe.
As safe as you can be, right? So that just brought up the second Twitter question that we do have here. This one comes from Jay Kessner 77. Has docking become routine, or is it dangerous?
I would have to say yes and yes. The technology that we use for docking has been out there for a long time, and it works extremely well. But it is dangerous because you are going incredibly fast, and you are, like I said, trying to collide with a big object in space in precisely the right point. And so we do spend a lot of time training for that, making sure we know how to fly the Soyuz. I should point out that in most cases, the Soyuz dockings are done automatically. We've got a very good radar system and computer systems, and the motion control system will guide you into the space station. But just in case something goes wrong, one of the pieces of equipment fails, you have to be prepared to fly it in yourself, and that's what we spend a lot of time practicing, so we can do it safely.
And hopefully we don't have to do that, though, right?
Right, exactly.
So let's talk about docking. As you're approaching, that's got to be a really exciting time for you guys, but just kind of explain to me, because we usually see the station side, everyone being excited, and they've been waiting for a while for, new company and whatnot, but what's going on aboard the Soyuz? It's been a long trip.
It has been a long trip, and the excitement is building, but it is a time where you really have to focus and make sure that everything is going right, make sure all the systems are working perfectly. So the three of us in the Soyuz are sitting in our seats in the descent module, and we are working very hard. We actually don't have good views of the station. We've got little bitty windows on the Soyuz that point out to the side. The station is in front of us, so we can't really see the station when we're coming up to it, although when I did look up my window, I could see the very tips of the solar arrays, but I don't have that big, beautiful view that you would think you would have when you're flying up to the station. So it's a busy time for the crew inside the Soyuz.
Yeah. Okay, so capture. Then what?
So you capture, you kind of thunk into the station, you feel the latches latch, some hooks drive, and then it's a hurry up and wait, really, because you have to make sure that nothing went wrong during docking, meaning that you didn't knock a hole into your spacecraft. So we do leak checks. We do a leak check of the area between the Soyuz and the space station. We do a leak check of the Soyuz itself to make sure it's still leak tight. And when all of that is good, and we do change out of our Sokol suits back into regular clothes. When all of that is good, a couple hours after we've reached the station, we're finally able to open the hatch and greet our friends on the space station.
Great. And I'm sure, so that explains actually why it takes a couple hours. So last night's docking occurred at 11:51 Central Time last night, and then the hatches open at 2:23 in the morning. That sounds pretty nominal because that was what was planned. I mean, I think they had an 11:52 docking, which is pretty much like perfect, and then 2:25 a.m. Central Time hatch opening. So it just went along
Yeah,
perfectly,
that's a
it seems.
perfect schedule, and most of that is taken up with the leak checks, and it takes a long time to check the pressurizations because you could have a really tiny leak, and you want to know. Obviously, if there's a big leak in the Soyuz somewhere, you'd know that right away. But you're looking for the tiny leaks, and so that's why it just takes time to do.
Sure. And I'm going to flip it on you. So you were also on station when you had a new crew join you guys. So what are you guys doing?
Um, yeah, that's an exciting time for the crew on the station. So the we have a couple of places where we can watch. We do have some TV screens, so we're getting video, and we can look out the windows and see the Soyuz approach. And for one Soyuz, or for Soyuz docking, I actually went to the hatch area where they would be docking and put my ear next to the hatch so I could hear them attached to the station, which was kind of
Yeah,
neat.
that's fun. That sounds really fun. Um, so hatches open, you greet each other, there's a welcome ceremony, and then you have an opportunity to talk with friends and family who actually travel that long way to see you lift off. What is that like?
That's pretty neat, and it is really special because the crew and the Soyuz has been out of view for 2 days, and so I think it's really important that the family gets a chance, and your friends and the world to get a chance to see that know that everybody's okay, and you can say hi to your friends and family, and then say, I finally made it. I've worked this long, and here I am, and I'm ready to get to work.
Yeah, and I'm sure it's probably pretty nice to knowing that you had that family, that support there, knowing that they're going to be with you all along the way, even though you're not. You're many, many miles away for quite a long time.
Absolutely, no question. It is a long training process. You're in orbit for a long time, and none of it is possible without the support of your friends and family.
Sure. Now, on station, first order of business.
First order of business, actually, a short break after the welcome ceremony, and then you actually have a safety briefing because you're in a new vehicle. You need to make sure that you refresh your memory where all the safety equipment is. So that is the first thing that happens. And then after that, hopefully, a little bite to eat because you're probably pretty hungry.
And do you tour, I guess?
You take a tour of the space station as you're doing your safety briefing. So you'll actually go through every module, and the crew that's already on the station will point out, here are the fire extinguishers, here are the valves that we'll need to operate should we have a fire or a depress or a toxic atmosphere. And so you go through and refresh your memory. It's kind of a quick run through because you actually have a more thorough one a day or two later when you've had time to sort of collect your thoughts and get a good night's sleep and process information better. But you do have that first run through, and then since it has been a long day, usually it's a bite to eat, set up your crew quarters, and then go to sleep.
Right. So I know the crew that has now joined, Sunny, Aki, and Yuri, are going to spend some time with some familiarization tasks. Luckily, all three of them have flown before. But also just adjusting space. How long does that take? I mean, for you to adjust and get kind of, you know,
Yeah, adjusting to space, it really depends on the individual. Some people adjust quite quickly. Some people, it's more slowly. Some people go through two adjustments. You may adjust into space while you're on the Soyuz, and then you get into the space station. It's a much bigger volume, and you have a different adjustment period. For me, I felt fine the whole time, but it took me a while to sort of learn how to fly about gracefully. You really have to learn how hard you have to push off so you don't go crashing into equipment, into walls and things. So it takes a while to get your sea legs, as it were.
yeah. And I know, with you were there for 163 days. I'm sure after some point in time, I think I've even heard that there are some games to see who can fly the furthest without knocking into anything.
Yeah, we would do that. We would, when we had some spare time, and we said we got to take advantage of this atmosphere. We got to have some fun. So we would try to fly from one end of the station to the other without running into things. And then my colleague Dougie and I would try and do these do-si-dos where we would do a little loop-to-loop and try to head back the direction that we came. But that was never successful because I think we had a mass problem. Doug weighs a lot more than I do, or a lot more mass, and so I was always being flung off into some of the direction that I didn't want to go.
That's great. Well, and spare time is just hard to come by there on space station, so you definitely have to take advantage of it when it's there. So I'm gonna go ahead and ask you another quick couple of questions that came to us from Twitter. This one comes from Cyrus Dubash. What speed is ISS traveling at the time you're docking? And after docking, is the ISS still moving? And if so, at what speed?
Oh, that's a very good question. The station is moving at roughly 17,500 miles an hour, or roughly 30,000 kilometers an hour, and it is moving that fast through the entire docking process and afterward. So what the Soyuz does, the station's in orbit, and the Soyuz plays catch up to it, and then you sort of go into a holding pattern. So you're matching the speed with the station, and then you're slowly inching forward. So it looks slow on the TV video that you see down, but you're actually zipping through space pretty fast.
Wow. So now, just one other thing. So one of the activities that the crew is doing aboard space station today, the new crew members, they are setting up their crew quarters. Can you tell me a little about what the crew quarters is like?
Yeah, the crew quarters are your only personal space on the station. It's a very small space, about the size of a, I would say, an old phone booth, or like the red British phone booths. It's about that big. You have a sleeping bag inside that's attached to a wall, and that's where you sleep. You actually have a laptop inside where you can get your email and make phone calls to your friends and family. And then you have a few of your clothes that are in there. You don't have all your clothes because you don't want 6 months worth of clothes inside your crew quarters, but the clothes that you wear for about a week, they're your exercise clothes and things like that, and are in their crew quarters with you. And what other personal items, like if you brought pictures of family, you can put those up inside your crew quarters.
Oh, very good. Well, so while flying to space and being on the space station, a lot of the activities seem to be a lot of routine maintenance and upkeep because, it's just like being at home, right? We have to maintain our home. But also there is science. And so this next question is kind of talks about science. So I want to go ahead and ask this one. This one came on Twitter from Jones W. Caleb. How can I best kindle my daughter's interest in science?
Oh, that is a good question. It's always tough to answer questions like that. First, you got to see where your daughter's interests lie. She may be, and by that I mean she may be interested in the biological sciences as opposed to the physical sciences. And so, if you can pick a direction, then maybe you can show things, do experiments at home. Science is a lot of fun, and so you get kids involved at a young age and sort of thinking about how the world works and what happens if I do something. They're going to be interested in science for the long haul. So I'd say start introducing fun experiments at home and see where it takes you.
And then you never know what's going to happen because they may be doing science all the time and around the house, and you may be sorry you did that.
Well, that's true. You never know, but think of it as a good thing.
That's very good. So just one last question before we go. Speaking of science, so what was your favorite science experiment while you were there?
Oh, that's a good question. When I was on the station, we had something like 100, I forget, 130 different experiments going. So unfortunately, we don't get to spend a lot of time with too many of them. I thought some of the most interesting ones were ones where I was the test subject. We were studying how the human body reacted to various things. We were doing a study on how types of protein you eat, animal protein versus vegetable protein, how that affects your bone and muscle mass. And so things like that are very interesting to me, but all my involvement was essentially eating certain specialized diets that they had, and then donating blood and urine, which is not that exciting to do. A little difficult in space, but some of the Japanese experiments that I did with plants were very interesting to me. Watching plants go and see how they are affected by zero gravity is very interesting.
Yeah, I always find that experiment very interesting as well. And the diet one, that one is essentially to show us how, because there's bone loss, and so maybe it's to help mitigate the negative effects that spaceflight, long duration spaceflight has on our bodies.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So it's twofold. One, can we mitigate the effects of space on the crews while they're there based on diet, something as simple as diet? And I think the answer is yes. But then it also has a wide application to people on Earth, because of course osteoporosis is a big problem for so many women. And if you can change people's diets ever so slightly and say, this type of protein is better than that type of protein to maintaining your muscle and bone mass, then people will be better off in the long run.
Right, and I can imagine that'll be very important for us as we continue in space and continue our future in space exploration.
Absolutely.
So Shannon, thanks so much for coming out. An exciting day for the Expedition 32, your colleagues, so it must be fun watching them, and always a pleasure talking with you. Thanks for coming.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you. This is Mission Control Houston.